This is a man who behaved rationally, privately, a little introverted, liked to play video poker, but he was a rational man, and yet he prepared over an extended period of time a totally irrational act. Now, this sounds like someone either totally demented, a behavior which he never evidenced, or someone who's sending a message. This is a plan. We don't know what that message is or if there is one, but this behavior, according to my employees, is as stunning, as unexpected as any of them have ever met.
Those, of course, chilling words from famed casino owner Steve Wynn. Wynn says that some of his staff had known Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock for years, but as you heard, never saw any signs that he was capable of murder, let alone the carnage that unfolded last week, as he was responsible for the deadliest mass shooting in United States history. This as police continue to search for an exact motive. They say they don't have one yet. Randy Sutton joins us, retired lieutenant with the Las Vegas Metro Police, host of Blue Lives Radio. Randy, just heard Steve Wynn say either he was demented or sending a message. How do we find out which one? Or both?
That's the $64,000 question, Eric. How are we going to find? The fact that this investigation is already almost a week old, and we still don't have a motive, we might never find a motive, and we have to be ready to accept that, as difficult as that is. Now, we did find something else out very interesting, and that is that Paddock had a penchant for hiring prostitutes. And one of the prostitutes that was questioned by police indicated that he had violent rape fantasies and that he considered himself an evil man. Now, that's pretty interesting. It's a complete dichotomy from what we just heard Mr. Wynn talk about. So here we have this on one hand, he behaves normally. He portrays himself as just a normal guy, and has gotten away with it for years here in Las Vegas as that moderate gambler, private guy. And then we have the other side, the dark side that we now know that he possessed, and that is that he had these violent rape fantasies that he acted out with prostitutes. Now, what Metro is doing is questioning. They're reaching out and trying to find other prostitutes that he might have hired over the years.
Would they come forward?
If there's one that's been found.
You're in the PD for a long time with the ladies of the evening, so to speak. Come forward, you know, those who accompanied him and say what they knew or what he said?
Some will, some won't. And remember that that's a transient occupation, if you will. There may be women that were here at one time because since he's a longtime Vegas guy, he might have been doing this back in 2006 when he first started going into these casinos here. So since this has such national attention, I would urge that anyone who was in that line of work, if you will, and even though you might be leading a straight life now, you might hold the key to something that you don't even know. So if
you talk about,
I would urge them to come forward.
Exactly, absolutely. And you talk about the reports are that he claimed he had bad blood and was evil. And that's a reference to potentially his father, who, was a bank robber and apparently has psychological problems. What about what's being made a lot today about his mental state, his girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley? The New York Times reporting this, that, quote, he seemed to be deteriorating in recent months, both mentally and physically, she said. Perhaps his methodical and systematic mind had turned into a lethal and unpredictable, new direction. But, I mean, how do you carry this out like a professional hitman? Getting those calculations in that note in the room, and at the same time you got all this evil stuff going on and a deteriorating mental state, and you're apparently on Valium. What effect, if any, could that? I mean, Valium is so common. Could that have had on him potentially carrying this out then?
Well, and that's very interesting that there was this noted deterioration, and but it certainly didn't affect his ability to reason. When it came down to his tactics. Now, here's something that I am really, really anxious to find out, and I know the law enforcement is looking deeply into this. You don't just pick up that kind of tactical experience, okay? When he's calculating mathematically his distance to his target, the elevation, and his kill pattern, this is something that I believe he might have had help in. And I think that is really going to be key to finding more information about this. Where did he get his training? That's really essential to understand and to know.
Yeah, you just don't pick up these, put that tripod, out the window and start shooting for the very first time in your life. And as you mentioned the other day, I mean, you can go out in the desert and do that, but as you just said, you pick this stuff up on the internet in a book, no. I mean, you got to have some help, potentially.
I would think so. I would think so, Eric. And I know that going through his phones and devices, that's where normal people, when they have that history of, wherever he obtained this knowledge, his contact might be in that one of those devices. And that's why it's so essential that law enforcement so methodically have to go through that entire lifetime history that are in those devices, because it might be back several years even. And so when you go through all those things, that's the tediousness of this investigation. But that's the benefit of having the resources of the FBI here, because they have basically the unlimited resources to go into the backgrounds of all of these individuals.
It is a massive investigation, as you say. The nugget certainly is out there somewhere. And we're confident.
But Eric, we really need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that we may never get the answers. And I know that's going to be very hard for the American public. I know that especially for these victims and their families, not knowing is going to be really devastating to them.
Well, we'll see.
So it's something but unfortunately, I think we have to resign ourselves to that possibility.
Well, it could be possible, but we're early on in this investigation, getting into his background. And as you say, if anyone had any contact with him, please tell authorities, no matter who you are. Lieutenant Randy Sutton, as always, thank you. And thank you for your service on the police department there, of course. All right,
I appreciate it. Thank you.